Good evening and welcome to Carlin tonight. So here we are again, another mess, another lie, another act of destruction dressed up as leadership by a man who has spent the better part of a decade convincing millions of Americans and the world that he alone could protect them from the chaos he now keeps creating. As gas prices surge to levels not seen in years directly because of Donald Trump's war with Iran, the man himself waddles onto social media to rewrite history in real time, as if the rest of us are just goldfish with car payments. He posts, in effect, "Don't worry, the pain is temporary. The oil prices will drop rapidly. Only stupid people would think otherwise. Only fools. That's always the line, isn't it? The public is suffering. The public is paying more. The public is left holding the bill, and the people responsible will tell you that if you object, if you have so much notice with your eyes what is happening to you, then you are fucking retarded, that you are unserious, you are not patriotic enough, that you are not loyal enough. You are expected to just sit there, smile politely, ask, you'll eat what's for dinner, and you won't ask too many questions. Why? Because that's the arrangement, and it is an insulting one. Because let's be very clear about what Donald Trump has promised. He did not run for office saying, "Vote for me and I'll light the Middle East on fire and send your gas prices through the fucking roof." He did not say, "Oh, elect me and I'll create a fresh energy crisis," hand wave it away on social media, and then sneer at you for complaining. He campaigned as the magician of abundance. He said he would unleash energy independence. He said he would bring gas prices are going to come down immediately. He said, "Drill, baby, drill." He said you'd spend less. He said it fast with confidence, with that same greasy uncertainty he always uses when he's selling fantasy to desperate people. He said something else, by the way. He said he was the candidate of peace. Remember that one? Watch. No more wars, no more disruptions, peace and prosperity for all. He practically wrapped himself up in a white flag and called it statesmanship. He sold himself not just as a strongman, but as a peacemaker. Not as a nationalist, but a stabilizer. Not as a deal maker, but the one man tough enough, brilliant enough, uniquely gifted enough to stop America from being dragged into yet another bloody disaster abroad. And what happened? He gets back into office, and almost immediately he helps launch a new war in the Middle East, which in turn drives gas prices sharply higher, which in turn raises gas prices for ordinary Americans, which in turn crushes the very people he spent years promising to help. So let's review the transaction. He promised lower gas prices, okay? You got higher gas prices. He promised peace, you got war. He promised stability, you got fucking disrupted. He promised prosperity, you got another fucking bill. That's the story. Everything else is just perfume sprayed on a corpse. And what makes this worse, by the way, what makes it genuinely grotesque, is that he did this none of this even had to happen, right? This was not just some unavoidable cosmic event. This was not a meteor. This was not an earthquake. This was not some mysterious market force beyond human control. Even the administration has conceded that there was no imminent Iranian attack on the United States. In other words, the emergency was not an emergency. The war footing was a choice. The oil spike was a consequence of that choice. The pain at the pump was not an act of God. It was a political decision made by one man, then sold the country back as noble sacrifice. No. That matters. It matters because presidents are not always directly responsible for gas prices. Usually they aren't. Usually the price of oil is shaped by a web of global factors: supply, demand, and inflation, geopolitics, post-pandemic recovery, wars started by other countries, production shifts, refinery issues. Now, under Biden, for all that screaming and all the theatrics and all the stupid little stickers that they slapped on gas pumps, the reality was much more complicated than the slogans. Presidents take the blame because they can sit in the big chair, and that is how politics works. But often, the direct causal link is weak. This is not one of those times. This is one of the rare moments where the link is obvious, brutal, and immediate. Without Trump's decision, this would not have happened, okay? I'm going to say it again. Without Trump's decision, this would not have ever happened. That is not spin. That is not partisan flair. That is cause and effect. The kind a child could understand if adults in Washington, D.C. were not so committed to pretending otherwise. And yet now comes the truly fascinating part. The same political movement that once acted as if wearing a mask for a couple of weeks during a global pandemic was the moral equivalent of living under Stalin and Hitler has suddenly discovered the virtue of sacrifice. Oh, have you noticed that? Short-term pain for long-term gain, short-term sacrifice, temporary disruption, a little suffering now, a brighter tomorrow later. Watch. Suddenly these people sound like wartime rationing posters. Suddenly they are philosophers of deferred gratification. Suddenly they want you to be patient, disciplined, and obedient, and mature. Amazing! Absolutely fucking amazing! This from the same people who treated the most minimal public health inconvenience as an assault on the soul of the Republic. The same people who vilified doctors, cursed out scientists, and carried on as if being asked to cover your face in a Costco for 10 minutes was literally Auschwitz. Those people now want you to pay more at the pump. They want you to pay more, swallow another Middle East conflict that they created, and trust the vision. Trust the vision, as if it would be hilarious if it weren't so nakedly hypocritical. But hypocrisy is too gentle for a word for it. This is utter contempt. It's contempt for the public. It's contempt for memory. It's contempt for language itself, because they assume that you don't want to remember what they said 5 minutes ago. They assume you are so politically concussed, so algorithmically sedated, so exhausted by scandal and spectacle that they can just reverse every fucking promise that they made and still keep you in line with a slogan and flag. And maybe some people will let them. Some people always do. The "don't tread on me" crowd is a perfect example, because they love to get the boots get treaded on their fucking necks. They will kneel down and accept the Donald Trump's boot because they love that shit. They always do. And it's like, okay, so there's this portion of the public eager to be conned, desperate to be conned, because by admitting you were fooled by a man like Donald Trump is simply too humiliating. So better to double down, better to blame the media, blame the market, blame Iran, blame Biden, blame the deep state, blame literally every single moving object in the known universe except the one man sitting in the Oval Office, making the decisions. But reality is stubborn, isn't it? Reality keeps the receipts, and that is exactly where another comparison becomes unavoidable. Because Trump is now assuring everyone that the pain will be brief, the prices will come down rapidly. Only idiots would doubt him. Fine, let's check the record. This is the same man who, at the start of COVID, told the country that it was under control. Totally under control. Totally under control. One person from China, we have it handled. Everything will be just fine. Right. And then 1 million Americans just lost their lives. So perhaps, just perhaps, this is not the man you trust when he squints into the middle distance and announces that the future is secure because he says so. Maybe the guy with a long record of lying, minimizing, fantasizing, and the stepping over the wreckage is not the oracle he imagines himself to be. Maybe the larger point is this. Breaking promises is not some unfortunate side effect of Trumpism. It is the central feature. It is the business model. This is who he is. This is who he is. He says whatever he wants to people, what they want to hear, and then governs for himself. His ego, his protection, his headlines, his donors, and his friends. This is the whole show. That is the entire presidency. One long confidence game played against working and middle-class Americans who keep being told that the next promise will be the real one. Look at the record. In his first term, there was always something grand just around the corner. A beautiful infrastructure bill that never materialized, a cheaper, better healthcare plan, a middle-class tax cut, a manufacturing renaissance, a jobs explosion, the renaissance of American industry, always coming, always imminent, always one more week away. And then as always, nothing. Smoke, noise, branding, grievance, another rally, another insult, another excuse. And now in this term, the same routine continues. Lower prices, cheaper groceries, lower rent, accountability for Epstein's victims, justice for the corrupt, relief for ordinary people, a return to prosperity, a rebirth of greatness. And what has actually materialized? What, in concrete terms, has this man done to improve the life of average Americans in the way that he promised? Nothing. Very little. What he's done reliably is enrich himself and the people around him. That part works every time. The tax cuts for the rich, the protection for insiders, the endless attention, the cult of personality, the insulation for consequences. He met his own network climbs fucking $4 billion plus already from the last time he was president. What the fuck's going on? So his own net worth climbs, his brand survives, his allies cash in, and you, the loyal voter, the forgotten man that he never stops pretending to worship, are left staring at a gas pump as the numbers climb faster than your wages ever will. That's not governance, that's extraction. It's lying, and it's telling everything you need to know about the relationship. He's not there to serve you. He never was. You were there to serve him, to cheer him, to defend him, to vote for him, to excuse him, to absorb the cost of his ego and call it patriotism. And that is why the sacrifices only move in one direction. His wealth rises, your costs rise, his headlines improve, your household budget deteriorates, his mythology expands, your life gets more expensive, my life gets more expensive, and at the same point, even the most devoted supporter has to ask a very simple question. What exactly was the point of putting this man back in office? Was he there to work for you? Or were you put on this earth to kneel before him like some overfed little king demanding tribute from people who can barely afford groceries? Because that is what this looks like. And yes, some people will still choose to believe him, because that's their right. You are free in this country to be fooled repeatedly by the same man, if that is the sort of humiliation you enjoy. But for everyone else, for the people still capable of thinking and pattern recognition, and for the people who still understand that words are supposed to mean something, the truth is now impossible to avoid. Donald Trump does not care about you. He never did. He cared about getting your vote. He cared about getting your loyalty. He cared about getting back into power. Now that he has it, you are expendable. You are just a number. Now it's about him. His legacy, his image, his war, his place in history, his appetite, his resentments, his grievances, his compulsions, his desperate need to appear strong even when the country pays the price for the performance. That is the presidency, a graveyard of broken promises with a gold-plated sign out front. So before you clap harder, before you excuse him more, before you dutifully repeat whatever phrase they hand you next week about short-term pain, long-term gain, maybe stop for a second. Maybe look honestly at the transaction, and maybe ask yourself whether you voted for a public servant or adopted a ruler. Perhaps ask the question whether this movement sees you as a citizen to be represented or a subject to be manipulated, because the answer is staring right at you in the face every time you fill your tank. Alright, so before you go, subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, because we're telling you the truth while they're lying to your face, and make no mistake, they would love to censor voices like me, bury independent media, and take us off the air if they could. So join us now while you still can. Tyler Carlin Tonight, Season 2, Episode 3. Episode 4 premieres tomorrow. Be there for it. Enjoy the rest of your night with the ones you love. Take care.